Hi, this is Pavel from Tarantool. In this video, we are going to compare TarantoolDB to other well-known technologies. There are many ways to do this comparison, but I am interested in 5 main groups: in-memory platforms, relational databases, key-value databases, document-oriented databases, and column-oriented databases. But before we begin, what is Tarantool? Tarantool is an in-memory computing platform with a flexible data schema. It is best used for creating high-performance applications. To have a better understanding about the high-level architecture of Tarantool, please refer to the video linked in the description. Alright, let's begin. We will start with in-memory platforms such as GridGain, Gigaspaces, Redis Enterprise, and Hazelcast. How are they similar? All of them have an in-memory engine, an in-memory database, and some kind of an application runtime. They allow you to flexibly build cluster systems for different amounts of data. In particular, they are used in the data grid role. These platforms aim at solving business problems. Each grid, each in-memory platform is built according to its own architecture, yet they belong to the same class. Also, these platforms include different sets of tools because each of them is aimed at its own segment. Tarantool is a general-purpose platform, not aimed at a particular segment. This gives you more opportunities and a wider range of possible business scenarios. Moving on to relational databases, we have MySQL and PostgreSQL. We will compare the in-memory engine of Tarantool with them. This allows us to position the engine itself in isolation from the application server and from the platform. Tarantool is very similar to relational databases because it stores data in forms similar to tables, in tuples and spaces. Indexes are built to the data just like in a relational database. In Tarantool, you can define a schema and you can use SQL to work with data. But it is the SQL schema that distinguishes Tarantool from classic relational databases. Because even though there is SQL, you don't have to use it. It is not the main tool for interacting with the database. And in the Tarantool, the schema is not strict. You can define it only for a part of your data. In typical relational databases, an in-memory table is a non-persistent storage. It is used for certain operations that have to be processed very fast. In Tarantool, the entire amount of data fits into memory. It is processed from memory and at the same time is reliable and persistent. This is so important that I will say this again. Tarantool stores the entire data set in memory and at the same time the data is securely stored on disk as snapshots. The next class to compare with is key value, such as Memcached, Redis, and Aerospike. In what way are we similar to them? Tarantool can work in the key value mode, and you can use only one index strictly. In this case, Tarantool behaves exactly like a classic key value storage. For example, Tarantool can be used as a drop-in replacement for Memcached. There is a module that implements the corresponding protocol, and in this case, we completely mirror Memcached. Tarantool is similar in its in-memory architecture to Redis. It just has a slightly different data structure. If Redis suits your architectural scenarios, Tarantool does too. You can find a detailed comparison in the article linked in the description below this video. And the main differences between Tarantool and key-value databases are secondary indexes, transactions, and iterators. In category number 4, we have document-oriented databases. The best example is MongoDB. You can store documents in Tarantool, yes. And therefore we can say that Tarantool is a document-oriented database in its own way. The internal storage format of Tarantool is MessagePack. This is essentially a binary JSON. It is almost equivalent to the format used in MongoDB, BSON. Both of them are very compact. In Tarantool, you can index the contents of these documents. The Our Schema library is also supported in Tarantool. It allows documents with a regular structure to be parsed into lines, and these lines are stored directly in the database. But Tarantool was not originally designed as a document-oriented database. This is a bonus feature to store some part of the data as documents. So Tarantool has a slightly weaker indexing mechanism in comparison with MongoDB. And a bonus round, column-oriented DBs. Answer here is very simple. Tarantool is not a column-oriented database, no surprise here. Cases that are good for column-oriented databases are not suitable for Tarantool, but they complement each other extremely well. Some of you might be familiar with ClickHouse. This is an excellent analytical solution. This is a column-oriented database, and ClickHouse does not do so well with microtransactions. If you send a lot of small transactions to it, it will not reach its maximum throughput. You need to batch the data. At the same time, you could and should send microtransactions to Tarantool. It is able to accumulate them. And since Tarantool has multiple connectors, it can accumulate these transactions and send them to a ClickHouse type storage as a batch. Everybody wins. So let's summarize this comparison. If we are looking at Tarantool versus in-memory platforms, the similarities are in-memory database and application runtime, flexible clustering tools, used mostly in data grid role, and there's focus on business cases. The differences are mostly in architecture, in different tools and connectors, and also in applicable business cases. If we're looking at Tarantool versus relational databases, the similarities are that the data is stored in tables or spaces in Tarantool. We both do indexes, we both do schemas and support SQL. But of course, the devil is in the details, and the differences are that we are an in-memory solution. Our schema is not strict, and SQL, even though it's supported, is not the main tool to communicate with the database. In the case of Tarantool versus key-value databases, we have similarities that are they work as a key-value store, and Tarantool can be a drop-in replacement both for Memcached and for Redis. If we look at the differences, we see that there are secondary indexes, transactions, and iterators. When comparing to document-oriented DBs, we see that we can also store documents as message pack, and we support our schema. And the differences lie in limited indexing capabilities. Last but not least, column-oriented DBs. There is no direct comparison here, but we can say that these are complementary tools, and they work especially great when using batching. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful. You can check the description for links to documentation that elaborate on the Tarantool functionality. And please leave your questions and comments below this video. You should join our Telegram group for news, for tips, and for free 24/7 support for Tarantool open source. Until the next time, goodbye.